People wonder about the title of elder law, and let me just start by saying, oddly enough, the attorneys that identify as elder law attorneys are the attorneys that have the expertise needed for people with children and family members with special needs or a disability. Why? Because the elder law attorney is the person that is trained in incapacity, disability law, and also how to do estate planning that is also mindful of public benefits programs, because the elder law attorney at their core is familiar with all the programs that are out there, eligibility and criteria, so when they do planning, they can integrate that so your estate plan does not get in the way of eligibility for critical benefits, but rather integrates that. So it's kind of counterintuitive. I used to go to events and I'd have a little banner material that said San Diego Elder Law Center at special needs events, and people, do you know where you are? What are you doing here? So I sometimes call it Special Needs Law Center too, but the thing for you to understand, and many of you I know are not from California, and you go back, the elder law many states have specializations, and all of them have what we call certified elder law attorneys around the country. So that's something you should keep in mind, because the familiarity with public benefits programs is critical to this group and is not widely understood in the general estate planning community. So today we're going to look at the benefits of estate planning in general, but more importantly, the special challenges for families that have members with disabilities and special needs. The general goal of estate planning is to retain control over your assets and decisions and preserve your assets and provide for yourself and family members in the context of disability, and make selections that fit the needs of people that you care about after you're gone. The problems with inadequate planning, you have special challenges if there is a family member with special needs. During Karen's presentation about an hour ago, we had that mother that was talking about speech therapy, and she was saying, all these therapists, they come and go. People in my regional center plans, they come and go. I'm the continuity. I have to know. I'm the thing that makes it work. Absolutely. But you're not immortal. That's the problem. You are not immortal. So the challenge for this type of planning is, how do you set up a system that's going to provide for your family members when you no longer can do all the things you're doing right now, whether that's because of disability or because you're not immortal. Your plan for your special needs family member may need to last 50 years, plus or minus, could be more. How do you do that? So that's the challenge. That's longer than any one person that you could name. A lot of people come in and they say, well, their plan is his sister will take care of him when I can't anymore. Well, that works if it works, but things may happen in her life. She may move to Bangor, Maine. I mean, it's probably is somebody here from Bangor, Maine, but it may not be geographically able anymore. Things could happen in their life. They may die. They may get in, a lot of things can happen in somebody else's life. You need a system that is not dependent on an individual person if you want something to last a while. So that's the challenge. Now the general, for anybody, whether there's a special needs family member or not, the solution to planning is what we call the integrated estate plan. And we call it that. Whoops, I didn't start my timer. Well, haha. There we go. I'll try to add 5 minutes to this. There is no one document that's going to do all the things that you want. Typically, most people will have a trust-based plan. And we'll talk a little bit about what that is, but that's a trust, and a trustee doesn't do anything about assets that aren't in the trust. So powers of attorney are needed as well, healthcare powers, financial powers of attorney, what we call pour-over wills. There's more than one document that is needed. And again, for families with people with special needs, you need benefits-preserving language. Now, somebody might say SSI, well, that only is paying $900, $1,000 a month. That really can be an average over a lifetime of about $600,000. That's all, not counting the extra benefits that come from the qualification that SSI will bring somebody for Medicaid benefits and all the ancillary programs that come from that. So at least 600, that's a lot to take off the table. That's why when you're doing your estate planning for these programs, you need to make sure that it's integrated. So really, this slide helps us understand part of the challenges here. There's two types, if I may divide it this way, of governmental benefits programs, what we call the, wrong slide, the integrated estate plan. So this kind of explains why it takes more than one document. The trust will be a perfectly serviceable document during your lifetime and after your death. That's one of the benefits of a trust, and why a trust, particularly for special needs families, is the core. You'll need financial powers of attorney to manage assets that are outside of the trust, a pour-over will to bring assets in the trust that were left out of the trust at the death of the beneficiary, and the health care assets. So a trust will, particularly for those in California where probate is a real thing, but in any state, is going to avoid probate processes. And more importantly, it offers a way to manage assets during disability. And that could include your disability as well. One of the common problems we see in families that have members with disabilities is a trust that doesn't provide for the trustee, if it's no longer you, if you're not able to be the trustee, to use the funds for anybody other than the person who set the trust up. Well, you've got family members that are dependent on you, so you need to make sure that the trust provides for that. So a trust is a document that is created by you. It's really a way of taking ownership and dividing it into three categories. The owner, the person who establishes it; the trustee, that's the manager, that's the person who runs it, the person who is investing the assets and deciding how they're distributed; and finally, the beneficiary, that's the person who it's being done for. Now, when we start and do set together our own trust, we will be, as the owners, is variously known as grantor, settlor, trustor. That is, again, the owner, the person who's setting it up, choosing the language, and transferring their assets into it. Typically, when we set up our family revocable trust, we're wearing all three hats. We're the grantor setting it up, we're the trustee managing it, investing it, choosing how it is spent, and we're the beneficiary. It's for, my trust is for myself and my wife. And we may choose to use some of that with our children as well. Now, you will always be the owner as long as you're alive. You may not always be the trustee. Again, you may become incapacitated. You'll be the beneficiary as long as you're alive, but on your death, somebody else, your successor beneficiaries. So that's how it works. It protects you during life because it's a way to say who is entitled to support. And how are they supported? What are the terms of that support? On your death, it continues to provide guidance. It can provide for the terms of spousal support as it goes forward. Terms of inheritance. In terms of inheritance and whether or not there's special needs trust or retained asset trust is an important concept. You may have some children that when you and your spouse are gone, that your estate plan says, and divide it up into these shares. And the share that goes to Johnny is outright. Share that goes to Sally is outright, but you may have a special needs child. You do not want to leave that share outright. It's going to make them ineligible, possibly, for critical public benefits. They may not, and likely not able to manage it. You need to retain that in a trust. And being the person that knows what the concerns are, you need to make sure that trust is one that adequately provides for them. So, this presentation, by the way, is usually about an hour and a half long, and I've trimmed down the slides, and I'm going to kind of skip through some others too, and will also be available to answer questions here at the end. So, now, I'm going to talk about the different types of public benefits programs. Really, two categories: those that we call entitlement benefits and those that we call needs-based or means-tested benefits. Now, entitled benefits, this has become a confusing term lately, but basically, in this context, what it means is something you earned. Most commonly, your Social Security. You earned your Social Security by working a requisite number of work periods. You are vested in it. It's like an insurance policy. You pay for it, you vest in it, it's yours. Your assets and income are irrelevant. Bill Gates could collect Social Security. Bill Gates, if he was disabled, could collect Social Security disability. His assets and income are irrelevant. The needs-based benefits, however, or means-tested, are ones that are built as the social safety net for the aged, blind, and disabled who have financial need for these programs. So assets and income are important and do go into the analysis. Now, again, SSI is the most common of these programs and is a critical basis for many special needs beneficiaries. Now, each of these two constructs, the needs-based programs and the entitlement ones, has a connected health care plan. For your entitlement programs, that is Medicare. For your needs-based programs, it is Medicaid. Or in California, as we call it, Medi-Cal. We've got to be different. Let me see, hold on. Yes, here's a slide here, and I passed these out. If you did not get a copy of the PowerPoints, there's a few extras up here, and I'm sure we can email them to you if needed as well. Here's a list of some of the entitlement programs and some of the more common needs-based programs. I'm going to go down a short alley here because with groups like this, it's very important to understand this and often missed. There is, even though a special needs child or your CDG child is not likely to have their own work history sufficient to vest in Social Security and get Medicare, there is a program, Disabled Adult Child Program, where they can collect through the work history of a parent. When that parent themselves is collecting. So that parent needs to be either retired, disabled, or deceased. At that point in time, that child is eligible to apply for that. That may be significantly more, depending on the parent's work history, than SSI pays. But more importantly, after 2 years getting those cash benefits, that child will vest in Medicare. And as it is comprised right now, Medicare is a superior, more flexible health care program than Medicaid. Easier to find providers, easier to find treatment. So that's something to keep in mind. If that describes you now, you're going to want to get in touch, do some research about this, get in touch with Social Security. And if not, you're going to want to put that in the back of your mind as something to be aware of, because it may be teed up for you later. So, how do trusts enter into this? Well, most trusts are countable assets by the means-tested programs, the needs-based programs, again, chiefly SSI, as well as Medicaid. So, assets above the $2,000, the countable assets, there are some exempt assets, but countable assets above the $2,000 threshold is going to make somebody ineligible. So if you leave a special needs person a nice inheritance outright, that's fine, but they're going to lose those benefits and all the connected programs. There are, however, special needs trusts. These are trusts that provide a safe harbor. These are trusts that you can put assets in for that person that are not counted as their assets by these needs-based programs. And yet, they are there. That family member you have established that for can be the sole beneficiary of that trust. That can pay for all the quality of life things that the basic programs do not pay for. It can make all the difference in the world. And that is the core of what we're talking about with special needs trusts, but you've got to plan for this. So, as a special needs family, you're going to want the estate planning to integrate the preservation of public benefits eligibility. As I said, I've calculated that for an average life expectancy, if you look at somebody in their 20s and you figure they're going to live into their 60s, that's about $600,000 you'd be taking off the table. And as I said before, too, plus all the ancillary programs that boots up. The other challenges that you have is planning for bequests from other family members. You may have a special needs trust and a plan for everything to go in a special needs trust, and grandma dies and leaves an insurance policy outright to your child. Oops. Now you've got to do some scrambling to see how that doesn't disqualify them from their programs. There are things that you can do, but none as effective as coordinating with grandma and making sure she understands the benefits of what we call a third-party special needs trust. You also have challenges about knowing that the right team is in place to do the things that you're now doing when you no longer can do it. And that really is the theme of my talk today. I'm not going to deal, one of the things I'm going to skip over here is this slide, for the most part, 7 mistakes. I want to highlight one, though. Obviously, disinheriting the child, we don't see that as much anymore, but we used to see it. Oh, well, they're on SSI, they don't need anything else, we're disinheriting them. Yikes. Totally unnecessary. But an ancillary thing people sometimes do is say, I'm going to give a double share of our estate to their sister, and their sister will take care of them. Once more, that's something that might work if it works, but that's putting a lot of things at risk. Number one, I will assume for the sake of argument that their sister would save every penny and spend it on them, but typically when I hear these scenarios, I don't believe that. But even if it is true, things that can happen in that other child's life, they could get in an ugly divorce, that money you left for their help take care of their brother could get sucked into that. Their spouse could have a business reversal and have creditors. They could get in an auto accident and be sued. They, heavens forbid, could die young and early. And now this money you planned that sibling would be using for their sibling is the property of your son-in-law or daughter-in-law, who may not feel the same way, right? So you don't need to take any of those risks if you establish your own special needs trust. So there are 2 basic types of special needs trust: third-party special needs trust and first-party. We're only talking today about third-party. First-party are ones that are established by the disabled individual themselves with their money. They have pretty restrictive rules, most importantly of which a payback clause, where you have to take anything that's left in that trust upon their death and give it to your state Medicaid agency. So that's not a good option. Third-party trusts are ones that are established by anybody else on the planet. You as parents. What you establish in your estate plan is a third-party trust. So there's no payback clause. The only thing that really needs to not be counted by this program is to be what we call a fully discretionary trust, which means that the disabled person cannot directly control that, cannot demand distributions, is not the trustee, that the trustee has the discretion to decide what distributions are made. And if that is so and properly done, then these benefits programs will not count it as their money. And that's what you're looking for. Whoops, going the wrong way there. So, with a good third-party special needs trust, the assets you put in that will preserve their benefits, will not interfere with their public benefits, it will integrate with them, there will not be unnecessary restrictions, and you will get to decide in that trust language how it's administered, and who controls it, and what happens to it on the death of the beneficiary. Without that, not so much. So third-party special needs trust is the core. There are two basic ways people accomplish this. One is as a sub-trust of your family trust. So again, you might have 3 children, one of which has a disability and is a candidate for means-tested public benefits, and you might leave the shares of the other 2 outright, or maybe one of them has a spending problem. You might leave it in what we call a general needs trust, but clearly, for your special needs child, you're going to leave it in a special needs trust. So it's just waiting there as a standby trust that doesn't really come to life until you die. And then after a brief administration phase of your trust, it distributes to your other children and funds the special needs trust, and then it's off and running. Again, maybe for 50 years. The other is an independent trust. You do a current trust. It says irrevocable on the slide. It doesn't necessarily need to be irrevocable. It's nice. The nice thing about irrevocability is it invites contributions from other family members, such as grandparents. So they know that, well, I'm not giving it to you, I'm giving it to my grandchild. You can have one with a toggle. We often do ones where they're irrevocable now as you establish it, but you can say, well, as soon as anybody else puts in money, it becomes irrevocable. So I'm getting a 5-minute thing. I thought I had a little bit more, but I'll skip ahead here. Okay, so things you need to think about. This is important. This is not something you want to use a template or an attorney that doesn't know what they're doing. There are a lot of options, and you need something customized to your situations. So this is probably the most important slide in this presentation. How long will this trust need to last? This is a challenge. It may need to last 10, 20, 50 years after you. Once more, you are not immortal. The person that you are thinking about who would be the trustee, if you can't, is not immortal. More to the point, can anybody tell me what tax law is going to look like in 5 years? Can anybody tell me what public benefits law is going to look like in 10 years? Can anybody tell me what anything is going to look like in 10 or 20 years? No, and if you say you can, right, I mean, you're a fool. Y'all know better. So that's the thought you gotta take forward as you sit down with an attorney experienced in special needs and the resources in their community and the public benefits programs to devise this thing. So it needs not a person, not just to rely on a particular sibling. You need a process. You need a flexibility. You need it to organize it like a company that you plan to chug on long after you, which means people unknown to you. So, what we typically do is think, I mean, this needs a team approach, right? We usually have a 3-part team is what we recommend for our clients. Person number 1, a trustee. Very often we recommend a professional trustee for that, or at least somebody familiar with public benefits programs. We also need somebody that's either variously known as a trust protector or an advisory committee. Now this is something you might not have heard with your regular estate plans. But remember, you're the owner of your trust. Well, as the grantor, the settlor, as the owner, you have certain power nobody else does. The power to change the trust, the power to change the trust's terms and language. If you are disabled or deceased, and all the grantors are deceased, your trust is locked. It's a fixed document. It's inflexible. Nobody can change it. That we hearken back to the challenges of, looking at the future is a bad idea, because what do you need? You need flexibility. You need the ability to take a look and see what these things are like, public benefits law, tax law, in 5, 10 years. And if it needs some language to be changed, you need a mechanism that somebody can change that language, take advantage of changes in tax law, to take advantage of changes in public benefits law. That's what a trust protector can do. It's a person you can vest. You can prescribe to what extent they can change its terms. You certainly don't want them to change beneficiaries, but you can empower them to make administrative and certain types of change. That could be a single person. It can be what we call an advisory committee. You can have family members on it. There are a lot of things that can be discussed with an experienced attorney in this area to make that designed the way you want. And the third member of that team is a care manager. That is the person that is going to step in and do what that mother on Karen's slide is now doing when you no longer can. It may not be the trustee. That may be a person familiar with a trust law and special needs benefits. The trust protector is somebody that's in standby to need as used in the advisory committee to advise the trustee. But the care manager could be somebody who's intimately familiar with a particular condition that child has, perhaps. I know this is very rare, but at least familiar with regional center or what is going to be the version of regional center in 20 years. The assets, the technology, all the things in the community right now. Some of the types of professionals you've heard come up here today and share their expertise. You need your trust to spell out the importance of the trustee hiring, funding, and tapping into that type of expertise to deliver that knowledge and that advocacy for your family member after you. So, other things that can be done, life care plans, memorandum of intent we like our clients to do, your letter to the future. What does your child like? What are the challenges? What would you want somebody to know if you got hit by a meteor? We encourage our clients to write that letter to the future. And finally, again, an experienced special needs or elder law attorney to draft a plan like this. Most certified elder law attorneys or people very familiar with special needs will understand this. This is really a family dynasty trust. So we're getting near the end here. Other challenges, one thing I will point out, it says how to fund. If you're at the end of your life of wealth building, you may have enough assets right now to fund that trust, but maybe not. If you're younger and you don't, you can buy, and maybe you could get a life insurance policy and make this trust the beneficiary of it. So if you die before, you have the assets that you would like in that trust. Insurance might be able to fit that. Now, many of you may have heard of the Secure Act, which changed how retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 403 are inherited. Here's the good news. I mean, we used to talk about the stretch, which is being able to stretch those assets out for the beneficiary's life expectancy. That is gone for almost all people, but not what they call eligible designated beneficiaries. And somebody with a disability is exempt from that. So your retirement accounts are a golden tool for this type of planning. It's very tricky, however, when you make a trust a beneficiary of one of these. There are certain specific technical things that have to be done. Another reason that you would want that discussion with an attorney experienced with this. And again, the discussion with other family members as well, so they know that you have this tool and they should use it as well. So finally, your solution, again, I do recommend the right type of attorney. I mentioned earlier, certified elder law attorneys are around the country. There's not a lot of them, but there are enough. That NELF The National Elder Law Foundation is the certifying agency for these. Most state bars recognize these as specializations. You can find one in your area at that website. The other one, NALA, National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, also has an attorney finding tool. NALA will let anybody join who pays their dues. I'm a member of NALA. I'm not saying that as disrespect. So the knowledge may vary. However, they will also on their website identify those who are certified elder law attorneys. And again, there are people who are not certified elder law attorneys who will be familiar with this. You just have to ask some real pointed questions about how familiar they are with special needs planning, because that's what you're entitled to. All right. Do we have, oh, but before I ask for questions, by the way, I know this is an international organization. For people who are from other countries, this may not be all that applicable, but most of the law about special needs trust is federal. So if you are somewhere in the United States, this applies to you. Your Medicaid program may not be called Medi-Cal, but all these programs about whether or not these benefits, special needs trusts work, is a matter of federal law. States may enhance that and modify that slightly, but they can't diminish that. So this will work wherever you are. All right.